Most people think they get distracted because they have bad focus. But what if that's not the real reason? Have you ever received a text that said, "We need to talk," and then nothing, no explanation, no follow-up, no reply for hours? Suddenly, you can't focus on anything else. You check your phone every few minutes. You replay recent conversations. You start imagining scenarios that probably aren't even true. And the strange part is, you know you're doing it, but you can't stop. Or maybe you've watched a TV show that ended right before a huge reveal and found yourself thinking about it the next day. Or you've remembered an embarrassing moment from 5 years ago, completely out of nowhere. Here's the question. Why do some thoughts disappear instantly, while others refuse to leave? Why can your brain let go of important things, but obsess over things it can't solve? As it turns out, there's a reason for all of this, a hidden psychological effect that influences what you think about, what you remember, and what keeps you awake at night. And once you see it, you'll start noticing it everywhere. Nearly 100 years ago, a psychology student noticed something incredibly strange. Not in a laboratory, but in a restaurant. Her name was Zeigarnik, and she noticed that waiters could remember huge numbers of unfinished orders. Who ordered what? Which table still needed food? Who hadn't paid yet? But the moment a customer settled the bill, the memory seemed to disappear. Almost instantly. It was as if the brain treated unfinished tasks differently from completed ones. So she decided to test it. Participants were given a series of tasks. Simple puzzles, small challenges, things that required concentration. But halfway through some of them, they were interrupted, forced to stop before they could finish. Later, the participants were asked what they remembered, and the results were surprising. People consistently remembered the unfinished tasks better than the completed ones. The brain appeared to keep unfinished business active, almost like it refused to file it away. Today, this is known as the Zeigarnik effect, and it explains far more of your life than you might think. Think about the last great TV show you watched. Everything is building toward a huge reveal. The tension rises. Questions are finally about to be answered. Then, the screen cuts to black. Credits roll. End of episode. And suddenly you're annoyed. Not because something happened, but because something didn't. You were denied closure. Your brain was preparing to complete a story. Instead, it got stuck with an unfinished one. And unfinished stories are surprisingly difficult to ignore. That's why cliffhangers work so well. Not because they're dramatic, but because they create an open loop. A question without an answer. And your brain hates unanswered questions. The funny thing is, the creators don't even need to make the cliffhanger that good. Once the loop is open, your own brain does most of the work. You start wondering, predicting, imagining, trying to solve a problem that can't yet be solved. And the more unanswered questions there are, the more attention the story demands. Nowhere is this more obvious than in social situations. Imagine sending someone a message. A few minutes later, you see those dreaded words. Read. They've seen it. They know it's there. And then, nothing. 5 minutes pass. 10 minutes. An hour. And suddenly, your brain starts working overtime. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Did something happen? Are they ignoring me? The strange thing is, you usually have almost no evidence, yet your brain keeps generating possibilities. Why? Because uncertainty is fuel for open loops. When there's no answer, the mind keeps searching for one. And the fewer clues you have, the more possibilities your brain invents. It's like opening 50 browser tabs and refusing to close any of them. This also explains why embarrassing memories can survive for years. Maybe you tripped in public, said something awkward, misread a situation, waved at someone who wasn't waving at you. At the time, the moment lasted seconds, but somehow your brain keeps bringing it back. Again, and again, and again. Part of the reason is that embarrassment often feels unfinished. Your brain keeps searching for a better version of events, a better response, a better outcome, a version where everything went perfectly, even though the moment ended years ago. The loop never fully closes. And that's where things get really interesting. Because this isn't actually a flaw in your brain. It's a feature. Imagine you're an early human. You hear a strange noise outside your shelter. Would it be useful for your brain to immediately forget about it? Probably not. Unresolved threats needed attention. Unfinished problems needed solving. The brain evolved to keep certain things active until they were dealt with. For most of human history, that was incredibly useful. The problem is, modern life contains more open loops than our ancestors could ever have imagined. Unread emails, missed calls, unfinished projects, notifications, goals, messages, deadlines, opportunities. Every day we're creating dozens of unresolved problems, and our brains treat many of them as unfinished business. This is one reason people feel mentally exhausted, even when they've done almost nothing physically demanding. Because your brain isn't carrying physical weight. It's carrying unresolved weight. Every unfinished task asks for a little attention. Every unanswered question occupies a little space. Every open loop quietly demands energy. One by one, they don't seem like much, but together, they can become overwhelming. And here's the part most people never realize. You can actually use this effect to your advantage. Many writers intentionally stop working before they're finished. Not when they're stuck, but when they know exactly what comes next. That sounds completely backwards. Wouldn't it make more sense to finish while you're motivated? Not necessarily, because an unfinished task creates an open loop, and the brain naturally wants to close it. When they return the next day, they don't have to force themselves to start. Their mind is already engaged. The problem is still active. The story is still unfinished. And continuing becomes much easier. The same principle explains why writing down tasks feels so satisfying. Most people think it's about organization. But something deeper is happening. When a task exists only in your head, your brain keeps reminding you about it, just in case you forget. But once you've written it down, the brain receives a signal. The problem has been stored safely. It no longer needs constant monitoring. The loop begins to close, and mental space is freed up. So the next time you can't stop thinking about something, ask yourself a simple question. Is this actually important? Or is it simply unfinished? Because those are very different things. Often, the thoughts that consume the most attention aren't the biggest problems in your life. They're just the ones without an ending. The unanswered text, the unfinished goal, the awkward conversation, the cliffhanger, the decision you never made, the opportunity you never pursued. Your brain doesn't necessarily care which problem is biggest. It cares which problem is still open. And maybe that's why you've watched this far. Because from the moment I asked that first question, Your brain wanted an answer. It wanted closure. It wanted the ending. And now, the loop is finally closed.